Do-hyun Kim stood at his security station in Incheon International Airport, watching the endless stream of bags move through the X-ray scanner. After 5 years as a regular security guard, his recent promotion to senior security officer still made him smile. He touched the new silver badge on his chest, remembering how proud his mother had been at the ceremony last month. The morning rush was beginning to slow down when an unusual item caught his eye. Among the regular suitcases and carry-on bags, a sleek titanium briefcase moved through his scanner. Do-hyun sat up straighter in his chair. The case's material was so dense that his scanner had trouble seeing inside it. "Excuse me," he called out in English to the owner of the briefcase. "Could you step over here, please?" A well-dressed woman in her 40s walked over to his station. She wore an expensive black suit and carried herself with confidence. Her name tag identified her as Jae-hyun Park. "Is there a problem, officer?" she asked, showing him her diplomatic passport. Do-hyun looked at her credentials. Everything seemed to be in order, but something felt wrong. The woman's right hand kept tapping against her leg, and she glanced at the briefcase every few seconds. "Ma'am, could you tell me what's in the briefcase?" Do-hyun asked, keeping his voice professional. "That information is classified," Jae-hyun replied. "My diplomatic credentials should be sufficient." At that moment, Do-hyun's colleague, Sun-mi Lee, walked over to his station. She had worked at the airport for 15 years and often helped him with difficult situations. "Do-hyun," Sun-mi said quietly in Korean, "if she has diplomatic papers, we should let her through." But Do-hyun couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The woman's nervous behavior didn't match her confident appearance. He had seen many diplomats pass through his checkpoint, and none had acted like this. "I need to get to my flight," Jae-hyun said, checking her watch. "I have an important meeting in Washington." "It will only take a few more minutes, ma'am," Do-hyun assured her. He typed some information into his computer, trying to verify her credentials through the international database. Jae-hyun's face showed a flash of worry. "Officer, I need to use the restroom. Can I leave my briefcase here and come back?" Do-hyun nodded, though this request made him even more suspicious. In his experience, people carrying important items never wanted to leave them behind. "Of course, ma'am. We'll keep it safe." As soon as Jae-hyun walked away, Do-hyun moved closer to examine the briefcase. The titanium surface gleamed under the airport lights, and he noticed small markings near the locks that he had never seen before. "Do-hyun, don't even think about it," Sun-mi warned, seeing the look in his eyes. "We need special permission to check diplomatic bags." "Something isn't right, Sun-mi," he replied, still staring at the briefcase. "Did you see how nervous she was? And who leaves a classified briefcase behind to go to the bathroom?" Sun-mi shook her head. "If you're worried, call it in. Don't try to open it yourself." Do-hyun knew she was right, but the thought of letting a security threat slip through his checkpoint bothered him deeply. He had worked hard for his promotion, and he wanted to prove he deserved it. He looked at his computer screen again. The verification system was taking longer than usual to process Jae-hyun's credentials. That was another red flag. Making his decision, Do-hyun reached for his electronic security override device. As the airport's senior security officer, he had the tools to open any lock in case of emergencies. "This is a bad idea," Sun-mi said, but she stayed nearby, watching the bathroom entrance for Jae-hyun's return. Do-hyun held the override device in his hand, his heart beating faster. If he was wrong about this, he could face serious consequences. But if he was right, he might stop something dangerous from entering the country. He looked at the bathroom entrance one more time. Jae-hyun hadn't returned yet. The titanium briefcase sat on his desk, mysterious and threatening. In his 5 years of service, he had learned to trust his instincts about suspicious behavior. Taking a deep breath, Do-hyun made his choice. He would open the briefcase. He didn't know it yet, but this decision would change his life forever. Do-hyun Kim looked at his security override device one last time. The small metal tool felt heavy in his hand. Around him, the airport continued its normal morning routine. Travelers walked past his security station, pulling their suitcases. The X-ray machine hummed steadily. "Last warning," Sunmai said, watching the bathroom entrance. "This could cost you your job." Do-hyun knew she was right. Opening a diplomatic briefcase without permission was against every rule in the security manual. But his instincts told him something was wrong, and those instincts had never failed him before. He picked up his radio and spoke quietly. "This is Senior Officer Kim. I'm about to inspect a suspicious item at Station 4. Please send backup." The radio crackled. "Copy that, Officer Kim. Team is on the way." Do-hyun put on his safety gloves and moved the titanium briefcase to the inspection table. Under the bright lights, he could see more strange markings on its surface. They looked like tiny circuits running through the metal. "Security team is 3 minutes out," Sunmai reported, checking her watch. "We should wait for them." But Do-hyun had already made up his mind. If the woman returned before he could check the briefcase, they might miss their only chance to stop whatever she was planning. He entered his security code into the override device. The small screen lit up green, showing it was ready. His hands were steady as he connected it to the briefcase's lock. He had done this hundreds of times during his training. "Starting override sequence," he announced, following proper procedure. Even if he was breaking some rules, he would document everything correctly. The override device beeped as it analyzed the lock. Do-hyun noticed something unusual. Instead of showing the normal scanning patterns, the device's screen displayed strange symbols he had never seen before. "Sunmai, come look at this," he called to his colleague. Sunmai walked over, still keeping one eye on the bathroom entrance. "I've never seen markings like that," she admitted. "Maybe we should call the tech team." "No time," Do-hyun replied. The override device had finished its scan. According to the screen, the lock was a standard diplomatic security system. He could open it with his regular codes. Do-hyun typed in his authorization code. The device accepted it with a soft beep. This was the point of no return. One more command would open the briefcase. Suddenly, the airport's security radio came alive with urgent messages. "All units, be on alert for a woman in a black suit, approximately 40 years old. She is impersonating a diplomat. Suspect was last seen entering the main terminal." Do-hyun and Sunmai looked at each other in shock. They had been right. The woman was suspicious. "Open it now," Sunmai said, completely changing her position. "Before she comes back." Do-hyun's fingers flew over the device's keypad. He entered the final command to unlock the briefcase. The device connected to the lock, sending electronic signals to disengage it. For a moment, nothing happened. The briefcase sat silently on the table, its titanium surface reflecting the fluorescent lights above. Then Do-hyun noticed something strange. The circuit-like patterns on the briefcase were beginning to glow with a faint blue light. The air around the case felt charged, like the moment before a lightning strike. "Step back," Sunmi shouted, but it was too late. A bright blue arc of electricity jumped from the briefcase to Do-hyun's override device. The charge traveled through the device and into his hands, despite his safety gloves. Do-hyun couldn't move. Every muscle in his body tensed as electricity coursed through him. The override device fell from his paralyzed fingers and clattered on the floor. The last thing he saw before losing consciousness was a group of people running toward his station. Among them was a woman who looked exactly like Jae-yun Park, but she wore a different suit and carried an FBI badge. Then everything went black. The first thing Do-hyun noticed was the smell of burned rubber. His hands felt numb, and his entire body ached as if he had run a marathon. Slowly, he opened his eyes. White ceiling tiles came into focus above him. He was lying on a bed in what looked like a hospital room. Medical machines beeped quietly nearby. His security uniform had been replaced with a hospital gown. "Officer Kim, can you hear me?" A calm voice asked. Do-hyun turned his head carefully. A doctor in a white coat stood beside his bed, checking some numbers on a monitor. The doctor's name tag read Dr. Min-ho Choi. What happened? Do-hyun asked. His voice sounded rough, and his throat felt dry. You were electrocuted, Dr. Min-ho explained, pouring a glass of water. The briefcase you tried to open had a very advanced security system. You're lucky. The shock was designed to stop people, not kill them. Do-hyun tried to sit up, but his muscles protested. Dr. Min-ho helped him drink some water. How long was I unconscious? Do-hyun asked. About 2 hours. The doctor made some notes on his tablet. Your colleague, Officer Lee, called the emergency team right away. She probably saved you from more serious injuries. Memory started coming back to Do-hyun. The titanium briefcase, the strange circuits, the blue lightning that had jumped from the case to his hands. The door opened, and Sunma walked in. She looked worried, but relieved to see him awake. You're an idiot, she said, but her voice was kind. I told you not to open it. The woman, Do-hyun remembered suddenly. She was an imposter. I saw someone else who looked like her, right before I passed out. Sun-Lee nodded. That's right. The real Jae-yun Park is the FBI director. She's here now, talking to airport security. Do-hyun felt his stomach sink. He had tried to break into the FBI director's personal briefcase. His career was over. The briefcase, he asked, what was in it? That's what I'm here to discuss, a new voice said. A woman entered the room. She looked exactly like the imposter, but carried herself differently. This woman moved with natural confidence, not the nervous energy Do-hyun had noticed earlier. She wore a dark blue suit and carried an FBI badge. Director Park, Sunma said, bowing slightly. Officer Kim, Director Park said, walking to his bedside. How are you feeling? I've been better, Do-hyun admitted. Director, I'm sorry about the briefcase. I thought. She held up her hand to stop him. The briefcase contained prototype quantum computing technology. The security system that shocked you cost more than this entire hospital wing. Do-hyun closed his eyes. Each word made his situation sound worse. However, Director Park continued, your suspicions about the imposter were correct. Na-young Kwon is a known technology thief. We've been tracking her for months. Do-hyun opened his eyes again, confused by the director's tone. She didn't sound angry. The security system did exactly what it was supposed to do, she explained. But we didn't expect it to be tested by an airport security officer. Most thieves try to steal the briefcase, not inspect it through official channels. Dr. Min-ho checked Do-hyun's vital signs again. He should make a full recovery, he reported. The security system was very precisely engineered. Good, Director Park said. She looked at Do-hyun with interest. Tell me, Officer Kim, what made you suspicious of the imposter? Her credentials seemed perfect. Do-hyun thought back to that morning. Little things. She was too nervous for a diplomat. She kept checking the briefcase, but then offered to leave it behind. And no real diplomat would abandon classified materials to use the bathroom. Director Park nodded slowly. Those are exactly the behavioral patterns we train our agents to notice. She paused, studying him. When you recover, we should talk about your future career options. Do-hyun wasn't sure he had heard her correctly. Was the FBI director offering him a job? Before he could ask, a loud alarm sounded in the hospital corridor. Dr. Min-ho rushed to the door. Security alert, he announced. Someone's trying to break into the secure wing. Director Park's face hardened. Kwon, she said. She's making another attempt. Do-hyun tried to get up, but his body wouldn't cooperate. He could only watch as Director Park hurried from the room, already speaking rapid commands into her phone. Hospital alarms continued to ring through the corridors. Do-hyun lay in his bed, frustrated that he couldn't help. His muscles still refused to work properly after the electric shock. Dr. Minho checked the security locks on the door and windows. Standard procedure, he explained. The secure wing goes into lockdown during emergencies. Sun Mai stood by the window, watching people run across the hospital grounds. I see FBI agents taking positions around the building, she reported. They're wearing tactical gear. Suddenly, the lights went out. Emergency lights came on, casting red shadows across the room. The medical machines switched to backup power, their beeping becoming louder in the tense silence. The power systems, Do Hyun said, his security training kicking in. She's trying to disable the security locks. Dr. Minho nodded. The backup generator should last for 6 hours. After that, he didn't finish the sentence. A voice came through on Sun Mi's radio. It was Director Park. All units suspect Naeum Kwan has been spotted in the basement. She's wearing hospital staff clothing. Consider her armed and dangerous. Do Hyun tried again to sit up. This time, his arms supported him better. The numbness was slowly fading. Dr. Minho quickly adjusted the bed to help him stay upright. The quantum technology, Do Hyun asked. Where is it now? Still in the briefcase, Sun Mi answered. Director Park had it moved to the secure storage room down the hall. That's probably what Kwan is after. Do Hyun thought about the security system that had shocked him. The briefcase is still dangerous, right? Even if she gets to it, she can't open it. Dr. Minho shook his head. The security charge was single-use. It needs to be reset at FBI headquarters. Right now, it's just a regular briefcase. That was bad news. Do Hyun looked around the room, his mind racing. He might not be able to walk, but maybe he could still help. Sun Mi, he called. Give me your radio and your tablet. I need to see the hospital's layout. Sun Mi handed him the devices. Do Hyun's fingers were stiff, but he could type. He pulled up the building plans on the tablet. Look, he said, pointing to the screen. The secure storage room has 2 entrances, the main door and a maintenance access panel. If Kwan studied the building plans, she'll use the maintenance panel. Sun Mi finished. It's harder to guard. Do Hyun pressed the radio button. Director Park, this is Officer Kim. Kwan will probably target the maintenance access panel in secure storage. It's accessible through the air conditioning system. There was a moment of silence. Then the radio crackled. Understood, Officer Kim. Good thinking. All units converge on the maintenance access points. They waited in tense silence. The red emergency lights made everything look strange and threatening. Dr. Minho checked Do Hyun's vital signs again, but his eyes kept moving to the door. Suddenly, they heard shouting from down the hall. Then a loud crash, followed by running footsteps. The radio came to life. Suspect spotted. She's heading for the main entrance. More noise echoed through the building. Running feet, shouted commands. Then a single loud bang that made everyone jump. The radio was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Director Park's voice came through. Suspect in custody. All units stand down. Power can be restored. Do Hyun let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. The regular lights flickered back on, looking too bright after the red emergency lighting. Director Park appeared in the doorway a few minutes later. Her suit was dusty, and her hair was messy, but she smiled. Nice work, Officer Kim, she said. Your insight about the maintenance panel was correct. We caught her trying to open it. The technology is safe. Do Hyun asked. Safe and secure. Director Park straightened her jacket. And speaking of security, I think it's time we had that talk about your future career. How do you feel about joining a special task force? Do Hyun looked at Sun Mi, who gave him an encouraging nod. His muscles still ached from the electric shock, but he felt stronger now. Sometimes, he thought, a bad decision could lead to an unexpected opportunity. I'm interested, he said. Very interested. 3 days after the incident, Do Hyun sat in a small conference room at the airport's administration building. His hands no longer shook. though faint red marks remained where the electricity had entered his body. Dr. Minho had cleared him to return to work, but that wasn't why he was here. Across the table sat Hai-Jin Kang, the lead investigator from Internal Affairs. She had a stern face and wore a perfectly pressed gray suit. Several folders lay open in front of her. "Let's review the events again, Officer Kim," she said, her voice professional but not unkind. "You attempted to open a diplomatic briefcase without proper authorization. Is this correct?" "Yes," Do-hyun answered. He had decided to be completely honest. "I suspected the woman carrying it was an imposter." "And how did you reach this conclusion?" Hai-Jin asked, making notes on her tablet. Do-hyun explained about the woman's nervous behavior and the unusual decision to leave the briefcase behind. As he spoke, he noticed Director Park standing quietly in a corner of the room, listening. "Your suspicions proved correct," Hai-Jin acknowledged. "However, the proper procedure would have been to alert your superiors and wait for backup. Instead, you attempted to override a diplomatic security seal. Do you understand the seriousness of this violation?" "Yes, Mom." Do-hyun looked down at his hands. "I let my desire to stop a potential threat override my training." Hai-Jin nodded and turned to a new page in her notes. The briefcase contained highly classified technology. If you had succeeded in opening it, you would have compromised national security. The fact that you were physically prevented from doing so does not excuse the attempt." The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the air conditioning. Do-hyun waited for the verdict. He had already accepted that he would probably lose his job. However, Hai-Jin continued, "We must also consider the outcome. Your suspicions about the imposter were correct. Your quick thinking during the hospital incident helped prevent the technology from being stolen, and Director Park has submitted a formal recommendation on your behalf." Do-hyun looked up in surprise. Director Park stepped forward from her corner. "Officer Kim showed excellent instincts," she said. "Yes, his methods were wrong, but his ability to spot suspicious behavior and think strategically under pressure is exactly what we need." Hai-Jin closed her folders and folded her hands on the table. "This puts us in an unusual position, Officer Kim. We cannot ignore your violation of security protocols. However, we also cannot ignore your potential value to law enforcement." She pulled out a new document and placed it in front of Do-hyun. "We are prepared to offer you a choice. Option 1. Accept a formal reprimand, undergo additional training, and return to your current position with 6 months of probation." Do-hyun nodded. It was better than losing his job completely. Option 2. Hai-Jin continued. "Accept a transfer to a new joint task force being formed between airport security and the FBI. You would work under Director Park's supervision, focusing on identifying and stopping technology theft at international ports of entry." Do-hyun stared at the document, hardly believing what he was hearing. "The task force would want me, even after what I did." "Sometimes," Director Park said, "the best security officers are the ones who learn from their mistakes. Your experience with the briefcase's security system will be valuable training material for other agents." Hai-Jin pushed the document closer to Do-hyun. "You have 24 hours to make your decision. Both options allow you to continue your career in law enforcement. The choice is yours." Do-hyun picked up the document and read it carefully. His entire future could depend on this decision. As he read, he thought about that morning at the security checkpoint. He had been right about the threat but wrong about how to handle it. Maybe that was the most important lesson of all. "I don't need 24 hours, he said finally. "I'd like to join the task force." Director Park smiled. "Welcome aboard, Officer Kim. Training starts next week." 1 week after accepting the task force position, Do-hyun sat in the FBI's Seoul field office, reviewing security footage from the day of the incident. Director Park had asked him to study the events carefully as part of his training. The screen showed multiple camera angles of the airport terminal. Do-hyun watched himself at the security checkpoint, talking to who he thought was Jae-yun Park. Now that he looked more closely, he noticed something strange. "Director," he called out, "could you come see this?" Director Park walked over to his desk. She had been teaching him about FBI investigation techniques all morning. "Look at the timestamp," Do-hyun said, pointing to the screen. "The imposter arrived at my checkpoint at 9:15 a.m., but according to the arrest report, the real Jae-hyun Park was detained in a coffee shop at 9:10 a.m. How could Kwon know to impersonate you if you were already trapped?" Director Park smiled. "Good catch. Keep going." Do-hyun pulled up more security footage. He saw Naeum Kwon walking through the airport, but something about her movement caught his attention. She looked nervous, yes, but she also looked like she was waiting for something. She wasn't working alone, Do-hyun said suddenly. This was a coordinated attack. Exactly. Director Park sat down next to him. "We arrested Kwon's partner yesterday. Would you like to know what we found in his apartment?" She handed Do-hyun a folder. Inside were photographs of airport security uniforms, guard schedules, and detailed maps of the terminal. He was planning to steal the briefcase during the regular shift change. Director Park explained. "But when he saw you checking Kwon's credentials more carefully than expected, they had to improvise." Do-hyun looked at the photographs again. "So when Kwon left for the bathroom, she was supposed to meet her partner." Director Park finished. "He would create a distraction while she switched the real briefcase with a fake one. But you didn't let the briefcase out of your sight. That's why she seemed so nervous," Do-hyun realized. She was waiting for a signal that never came. Director Park nodded. "Her partner couldn't get past the extra security guards I had placed around the terminal. When he saw the situation was hopeless, he ran. That's when Kwon had to improvise again." Do-hyun thought about what happened next. She hoped I would try to open the briefcase. The security system would cause confusion, giving her another chance to steal it. But she didn't know about the shock feature. Director Park said, "When you were taken to the hospital, she had to change her plans again. That's why she made the desperate attempt to break in." Do-hyun leaned back in his chair, processing this new information. His mistake in trying to open the briefcase had actually prevented a carefully planned theft. "There's more," Director Park said. She pulled out another folder. "We found these in Kwon's phone." The folder contained pictures of other diplomatic briefcases, all made of the same titanium material. Notes in the margins listed dates and locations. "She's been stealing technological secrets for years," Director Park explained. "But this was her biggest target yet. The quantum computing technology in that briefcase could have changed the balance of power in the tech world." "Why are you showing me all this?" Do-hyun asked. "Because starting tomorrow, you'll be helping us track down the rest of her network." Director Park stood up. "Your instincts at the checkpoint proved you can spot things others miss. We need those skills." Do-hyun looked at the security footage again. He had been so focused on his mistake that he hadn't seen the bigger picture. Now he understood why Director Park had offered him this position. "When do we start?" he asked. "Right now," Director Park replied. "Your first assignment is to review all security footage from the past month. Look for anyone who might have been helping scout the airport for Kwon." Do-hyun nodded and turned back to his screen. His hands still showed faint marks from the electric shock, but now they reminded him not of his mistake, but of how a series of unexpected events had led him to this new path. 3 months after joining the FBI task force, Do-hyun stood in front of a classroom filled with new airport security officers. The training room was quiet as the young officers watched him carefully. "This," Do-hyun said, holding up his hands to show the now faded marks, "is what happens when you ignore proper security protocols. I was lucky. The briefcase was designed to stop threats, not eliminate them." He clicked a button, and the screen behind him showed security footage from that day. The officers watched as his past self attempted to open the diplomatic briefcase. "I thought I was protecting my country," Do-hyun continued. "Instead, I almost compromised classified technology. My intentions were good, but my methods were wrong." Director Park stood at the back of the room, watching his presentation. She had asked him to share his experience as part of the new security training program. However, Do-hyun said, changing the screen to show Naeum Kwan's arrest photos, "This incident helped us uncover a major technology theft operation. Today, I want to teach you how to spot suspicious behavior without breaking protocols." For the next hour, Do-hyun explained the subtle signs he had noticed: the nervous tapping, the inconsistent behavior, the strange request to leave the briefcase behind. The new officers took careful notes. "Remember," he said, "your instincts are valuable tools, but they must work together with proper procedures. If you suspect something is wrong, call for backup. Follow the chain of command. Document everything." After the class, Director Park approached him. "Good presentation," she said. The young officers seemed impressed, especially when you showed them the security system diagrams. Do-hyun nodded. The FBI had allowed him to share basic information about the briefcase's technology as part of the training. The quantum security system was now famous among security personnel. "We have a new assignment for you," Director Park said, handing him a folder. "Our team in Japan reported similar diplomatic credential forgeries at Narita Airport. They think it might be connected to Kwan's network." Do-hyun opened the folder and studied the reports. The pattern looked familiar. "They're using the same techniques," he observed, "creating distractions, attempting to switch briefcases." "Exactly." Director Park smiled. "That's why I want you to fly to Tokyo tomorrow. You can spot these tactics better than anyone now. The Japanese security team needs your expertise." Do-hyun thought about how much his life had changed in 3 months, from almost losing his job to becoming an international security consultant. Sometimes the best lessons came from biggest mistakes. "One more thing," Director Park added. "The review board made their final decision about your actions during the incident." Do-hyun held his breath. Even though he had joined the task force, the airport's security review board still had to evaluate his conduct officially. "They've cleared you of all major violations," Director Park said. "Your success in helping us track down Kwan's network proved that you can learn from your mistakes. The board actually wants to use your case as an example of good instincts combined with poor execution." "Thank you, Director," Do-hyun said, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders, "for giving me a second chance." "You earned it," she replied. "Now about the Tokyo assignment. Your flight leaves at 800 tomorrow. Sunmai will be your partner for this mission. She specifically requested to work with you." Do-hyun smiled. Despite everything that had happened, his former colleague had stood by him. Now they would work together again, this time as FBI task force agents. "One last question," Director Park said, her expression serious. "If you could go back to that morning at the checkpoint, what would you do differently?" Do-hyun thought carefully before answering. "I would trust my instincts about the threat," he said, "but I would follow proper procedures to address it. Sometimes the slower path is the safer one." Director Park nodded approvingly. "That's exactly what I wanted to hear. Good luck in Tokyo, Agent Kim." 1 year after the briefcase incident, Do-hyun stood in the FBI's main training facility in Washington, D.C. The room was filled with senior security officials from airports around the world. They had gathered to learn about the latest developments in diplomatic security protocols. "The quantum security system that stopped me that day has been improved," Do-hyun explained to his audience. "The new version is now standard for all high-level diplomatic transport. But the most important security measure isn't the technology, it's the human element." He clicked through his presentation slides, showing security footage from various airports. Each image showed different attempts by technology thieves to steal secured items. "In Tokyo, we caught 3 members of Kwan's network," Do-hyun continued. "In Singapore, 4 more. Each time, it was alert security officers who noticed the warning signs. Officers who had been trained to trust their instincts while following proper procedures." Director Park watched from her usual spot at the back of the room. She had promoted Do-hyun to lead trainer for the International Security Program 6 months ago. His experience had proven invaluable in teaching others. Today, I'm excited to announce a new training program, Do-hyun said. Every security checkpoint will now have a special scanning system that simulates various threat scenarios. Officers can practice spotting suspicious behavior without risking real security breaches. The audience members nodded with approval. Several took notes on their tablets. And yes, Do-hyun added with a small smile, the training system includes a simulation of my famous electric shock incident, though I recommend learning from my mistake rather than repeating it. The room filled with polite laughter. Do-hyun's story had become well known in international security circles. Even the Briefcase's manufacturer now used it in their advertising. Security's so good, it stops threats before they can open the case. After the presentation, Sun-mi joined him by the podium. She had become one of the task force's top field agents, often working with Do-hyun on international cases. "Good speech," she said, "though you left out the part where I told you not to open the briefcase. Some details are better left for the advanced training sessions," Do-hyun replied with a laugh. Director Park walked over to them, holding a new security tablet. "Excellent presentation, Agent Kim." The International Security Council was very impressed. They've approved funding for the new training program at all major airports. "Thank you, Director," Do-hyun said. "I never thought my biggest mistake would lead to improving global security standards." Speaking of security, Director Park said, "We've received reports of a new type of technology theft attempt at European airports. The thieves are using artificial intelligence to create more convincing fake credentials. The council wants us to investigate." Do-hyun looked at Sun-mi, who nodded eagerly. "When do we leave?" "Tomorrow morning," Director Park replied. "Your experience with spotting fake credentials will be crucial for this mission. The team in London is waiting for you." Do-hyun packed up his presentation materials, thinking about how far he had come. From a security officer who broke protocol to an international trainer and field agent, his hands no longer showed marks from the electric shock, but he kept a small photograph of the titanium briefcase on his desk. It reminded him that good judgment meant balancing instinct with procedure. "Ready for another adventure?" Sun-mi asked as they walked out of the training room. "Always," Do-hyun replied. "But this time, I'll make sure to call for backup before touching any suspicious briefcases." Behind them, Director Park smiled. Sometimes the best agents were those who learned their lessons the hard way. Do-hyun's story would continue to teach new officers for years to come. Trust your instincts, follow the rules, and remember that even mistakes could lead to unexpected opportunities. The quantum security system that had shocked Do-hyun that day was now in museums, but its legacy lived on in the improved security protocols and training programs that protected airports around the world. Not bad, Do-hyun thought, for someone who had once made the mistake of illegally opening an FBI director's briefcase.